Tell me, Muse, of the man of twists and turns. That opening line from Homer's Odyssey isn't just poetry, it's the blueprint for every epic story you've ever lost yourself in. Think about it, a hero facing impossible odds, a journey that changes them forever, battles that test their very soul. These aren't just tropes from modern movies, they're echoes from nearly 3,000 years ago, when a blind poet first sang these tales into existence. What if I told you that every time you cheer for Luke Skywalker, ache with Frodo, or hold your breath as Katniss fights for survival, you're responding to something far older than special effects? You're feeling the pull of stories shaped by Homer's genius. From the halls of ancient Troy to the screens of Hollywood, the DNA of the Iliad and the Odyssey lives on in ways that might surprise you. The reluctant hero, Odysseus, the fallen warrior seeking glory, Achilles, the long journey home against all odds, that's been captivating audiences since before Rome was founded. Modern storytellers don't just borrow from Homer, they stand on his shoulders, whether they realize it or not. The next time you watch a Marvel film or dive into a fantasy novel, listen closely. Beneath the explosions and CGI, you'll hear the whisper of epic poetry, the rhythm of a story structure that's endured longer than empires. This isn't just about spotting references, it's about uncovering why these ancient tales still grip us today. Why do we still see ourselves in Achilles' rage or Odysseus' cunning? What makes a 3,000-year-old poem feel more alive than most things on your streaming queue? Over the next minutes, we're going to trace these threads across centuries, from the shores of ancient Greece to the director's chair of your favorite films. You'll never look at storytelling the same way again, because once you see Homer's fingerprints on everything from Star Wars to the Hunger Games, every book, every movie, every saga becomes part of a conversation that began when someone first gathered around a fire to hear about the man of twists and turns. Picture Odysseus standing on the deck of his ship, the shores of Troy fading behind him, unknowingly setting sail into one of the most enduring story patterns ever told. That moment where a hero leaves the familiar behind mirrors Luke Skywalker staring at the twin suns of Tatooine, or Frodo clutching the ring at the edge of the Shire. It's no accident. These stories share a skeleton, one first articulated not by Hollywood screenwriters, but by Homer's epics thousands of years ago. The scholar Joseph Campbell famously called this pattern the hero's journey, but he'd be the first to admit he was simply naming what Homer had already perfected. Take the call to adventure, that pivotal moment when destiny comes knocking. For Odysseus, it's the Trojan War pulling him from Ithaca. For Neo in the Matrix, it's Morpheus offering the red pill. The refusal, the mentor, the threshold crossing, every beat echoes the Odyssey. Even the trials and tribulations where heroes face their deepest fears. Odysseus battling Cyclops and Sirens isn't so different from Katniss navigating the Hunger Games arena, or Harry Potter facing Voldemort in the Forbidden Forest. And the return home, where the hero brings back hard-won wisdom. That's as true for Odysseus finally reaching Ithaca as it is for Simba reclaiming Pride Rock in The Lion King. George Lucas didn't hide Homer's influence. He openly wove the Odyssey into Star Wars, with Luke as a spacefaring Odysseus and Obi-Wan as his Athena-like guide. Peter Jackson did the same with Frodo's journey, layering Middle-earth with Homeric stakes. But here's what's fascinating. These archetypes stretch far beyond swords and sorcery. Think of Andy Dufresne's escape in The Shawshank Redemption as a modern Odyssey, or Elizabeth Bennet's emotional journey in Pride and Prejudice as a battle of wits worthy of Homer's heroes. The bones of these stories persist because they tap into something universal: the human struggle to grow, to survive, to find our way home, whether that home is a kingdom, a relationship, or simply our truest self. And that's the real magic of Homer's blueprint. It's not about recycling old plots. It's about recognizing that the best stories, ancient or modern, speak to the same fundamental truths. Whether it's a demigod battling monsters or a teenager navigating high school, the core remains: transformation through challenge. So the next time you watch a character step into the unknown, remember, they're walking a path first carved by a poet who understood, better than anyone, that the journey itself is what makes us heroes. The dust swirling over the plains of Troy, the clang of bronze against shield, the screams of warriors locked in a battle that would echo through history. Homer didn't just describe a war in the Iliad, he defined what epic conflict means. Fast forward 3,000 years, and the same primal energy crackles through the Battle of New York in the Avengers. Chariots replaced by Chitauri ships, Achilles' spear traded for Captain America's shield, yet the DNA is unmistakable. Homer's genius was weaving warfare with intimate stakes: Achilles' rage over Patroclus' death, Hector's doomed love for his family. Modern blockbusters learned that lesson well. Think of Tony Stark's sacrifice in Endgame. It's not just about saving the world, it's about a man facing his own mortality, just as Hector did outside the gates of Troy. What makes these battles unforgettable isn't the scale, it's the humanity. Homer showed us gods meddling in mortal affairs, and today we have Loki unleashing chaos or Zeus throwing lightning in Thor, Love and Thunder. The divine whims that decided fates in the Iliad evolved into superheroes falling from the sky. Even the visual language of war owes Homer a debt. The slow-motion chaos of 300 Thermopylae, with its blood-soaked beauty, mirrors Homer's unflinching gaze at glory and gore. And Troy, it's practically a love letter to the Iliad, with Brad Pitt's Achilles embodying that same lethal charisma, torn between pride and grief. Historians point to something deeper. These stories endure because they're not just about winning or losing. They're about cost: Hector's body dragged through the dirt, Iron Man's funeral in the rain. We remember the aftermath as much as the action. That's why Game of Thrones' Battle of the Bastards hits so hard. It's Iliad-level tragedy in a medieval cloak. So why do we still cheer for the underdog, whether it's Achilles against the Trojans or Cap standing alone against Thanos' army? Maybe because Homer understood a truth that still moves us. In the chaos of battle, we see ourselves, our fears, our loyalties, the lengths we'd go to protect what matters. And that's a story no era outgrows. Odysseus wasn't just a hero, he was the original mastermind, the guy who could outthink a cyclops while tied to a mast. That razor-sharp wit, the way he turns words into weapons, makes him the ancient ancestor of Tony Stark trading quips in Iron Man, or Sherlock Holmes unraveling a mystery with pure logic. But here's what Homer understood long before Marvel or Sherlock: intelligence alone doesn't make a hero compelling. It's the flaws beneath the brilliance: Odysseus' arrogance, his recklessness, that mirror Tony's ego or Sherlock's detachment. These aren't just clever protagonists, they're walking contradictions, and that's why we can't look away. Then there's Achilles, the warrior whose rage could sink ships. He's the blueprint for every brooding, battle-scarred antihero from Wolverine to Anakin Skywalker. Homer didn't sugarcoat him. Achilles is brutal, petty, even cruel, yet his grief over Patroclus humanizes him in a way that still stings. That's the secret sauce: characters who are larger than life yet painfully real. Think of Logan's claws and cynicism masking his tenderness, or Anakin's fall from hero to villain, fueled by love and loss. These modern icons aren't just copying Achilles, They're proving Homer's point that the most memorable heroes are the ones who scare us a little. What's revolutionary is how Homer refused to paint in black and white. His characters weren't paragons, they were messy, conflicted, even unlikable at times centuries before Walter White or Deadpool made anti-heroes mainstream. As scholar Bernard Knox put it, Homer's genius was showing us the heroism of failure, the glory in imperfection. That's why Odysseus' sneaky tricks and Achilles' tantrums don't ruin them, they make us lean in closer. Because deep down we see ourselves in their struggles, the pride that trips us up, the clever plans that backfire, the love that drives us to do reckless things. So when Katniss Everdeen hesitates to kill or Jon Snow refuses to bend the knee, they're channeling that same Homeric tension, the push and pull between duty and desire. These characters aren't just carrying torches lit in ancient Greece, they're adding new flames to the fire, and that's the real legacy of Homer's archetypes, not frozen templates but living, breathing inspirations. The next time you watch a hero wrestle with a moral gray area, remember Odysseus was there first, staring at the horizon, weighing the cost of every choice. Zeus hurls a thunderbolt from the peaks of Olympus, and suddenly the tide of battle shifts sound familiar. It should, because that same divine meddling plays out every time Thor summons lightning in Avengers or Wonder Woman charges into battle as Zeus' daughter. Homer's gods weren't just background decor. They were chaotic, capricious forces that toyed with mortals like chess pieces, setting a template for every all-powerful being in modern storytelling. Think about it. The Olympians squabbling over Troy's fate isn't so different from the Celestials debating Earth's worth in Eternals, or Doctor Strange peering into 14 million futures to steer humanity's path. The names change, but the game remains the same: mortals caught in the crossfire of higher powers. What makes Homer's divine interference so timeless? It's the sheer unpredictability. Athena might guide Odysseus one moment, then vanish when he needs her most, leaving him to outsmart a Cyclops alone. That same fickle energy fuels Loki's schemes in Thor, or the White Walker's icy indifference in Game of Thrones. Modern storytellers often swap gods for cosmic forces. Think of the Hunger Games capital, pulling strings like a high-tech pantheon, or the Matrix's architect, coldly calculating human survival. Even in The Lord of the Rings, the Valar operate much like Homer's gods, distant, enigmatic, and occasionally tipping the scales when it suits them. But here's the twist: while Homer's gods were openly worshipped, today's divine forces wear different masks. Technology plays deity in Black Mirror, with algorithms dictating lives. Alien overlords like Independence Day's invaders or Arrival's heptapods fill the role of inscrutable higher powers. And let's not forget superheroes themselves. Are the Avengers really so different from the Olympians? Tony Stark's tech genius mirrors Hephaestus' craftsmanship, while Superman's moral dilemmas echo Apollo's conflicted patronage. The key is stakes. Whether it's Zeus dooming a hero or Thanos snapping half the universe, these forces force mortals to confront their own fragility, and that's a story hook sharper than Poseidon's trident. So why does divine intervention still thrill us? Maybe because it reflects our deepest anxieties, the sense that something or someone out there holds the cards. Homer knew that uncertainty is the ultimate tension builder. When Wonder Woman defies Ares or Neo rejects the architect's control, they're channeling that ancient defiance, proving that even in the face of gods, mortals still get to choose their fate. And that's the spark that keeps these stories burning, whether the lightning comes from Olympus or a vibranium shield. Hector stands before the gates of Troy, knowing the prophecy: his death is sealed, his city doomed. Yet he tightens his helmet and steps forward anyway. That moment, raw and human, is why we still talk about the Iliad today. It's not just about fate winning, it's about the courage to meet it head-on. Fast forward to Ned Stark in Game of Thrones, another man bound by honor, walking toward a destiny he can't escape. Both stories force us to ask, what's more powerful, the hand we're dealt or how we play it? Homer didn't just invent this tension, he weaponized it, making us ache for characters who fight knowing they'll lose. Philosophers have wrestled with this for millennia. Aristotle called tragedy the collision of fate and flaw, while the Stoics argued that acceptance, not resistance, was the path to peace. But storytellers, they thrive in the messy middle. Take The Matrix, where Neo's chosen one status hangs over him like Hector's prophecy. The Oracle's words, "Know thyself," echo the Delphic maxims carved into ancient Greek temples. Even Inception plays with this, Cobb's guilt a spectre as inescapable as any Olympian curse. The genius of these modern tales isn't abandoning fate, it's letting characters grapple with it, like Odysseus clinging to the mast while the sirens sing. Audiences don't just watch these battles, they feel them in their bones. Why else would we cheer when Katniss volunteers for Prim, or when Fury Road's Max roars into the wasteland? It's not hope of victory, it's the defiance itself. Homer knew that tension is the heartbeat of drama. Hector's farewell to Andromache isn't tragic because he dies, it's tragic because he chooses to. That's the alchemy modern storytellers inherited. Fate isn't a spoiler, it's the crucible that reveals who we are. So next time you see a hero stare down the inevitable, whether it's Tony Stark snapping his fingers or Frodo claiming the ring, remember, you're not just watching a character. You're witnessing the oldest question of all, sung anew. Do we shape our stories or do they shape us? Maybe the answer's in the telling. Odysseus didn't tell his story in a straight line, and neither does Christopher Nolan. Think about it, the Odyssey doesn't start with Troy's fall. It drops us mid-journey with Odysseus trapped on Calypso's island, then spirals backward through storms and monsters before revealing how he got there. Sound familiar? That's because Homer's leapfrogging timeline is the grandfather of every mind-bending narrative, from Pulp Fiction's shuffled scenes to Westworld's layered realities. What feels like a modern storytelling trick, nonlinear structure, was already ancient when the Parthenon was built. Homer's genius wasn't just breaking chronology for flair, it was weaponizing time to deepen suspense. By withholding Odysseus' past until Book 9, he makes us lean in. Why is this man so desperate to get home? What horrors left him shipwrecked and alone? That delayed revelation mirrors Arrival's puzzle box narrative, where Louise's fractured memories of a daughter she hasn't met yet only snap into focus in the final act. Or consider The Godfather Part Roman 2, cutting between young Vito's rise and Michael's moral collapse. The parallels aren't just structural, they're emotional. Homer knew that peeling back layers out of order makes audiences feel the weight of history, like Michael Corleone's sins echoing his father's. Even the flashback's mechanics are startlingly modern. When Odysseus narrates his own adventures at the Phaeacian court, Cyclops, sirens, the underworld, it's not just exposition. It's a character revealing himself through memory, much like Slumdog Millionaire's Jamal piecing together his life through quiz show prompts. Or Memento's Leonard tattooing clues backward to cope with trauma. These aren't gimmicks, they're psychological portraits, and Homer sketched the first one. So why does this 3,000-year-old technique still feel fresh? Because nonlinear storytelling mirrors how we actually think, in flashes of memory, emotional echoes, fragments that only make sense in retrospect. When Lost jumps between island survival and backstories, or Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind scrambles Joel's memories, they're tapping into the same human truth Homer grasped. Our past isn't a straight road. It's a stormy sea, and the best stories let us drift on its currents. Imagine a smoky hall in ancient Greece, where a bard's voice rises and falls like waves, painting pictures of Odysseus' ship battling Poseidon's wrath. There were no screens, no special effects, just the power of spoken word, weaving images so vivid the audience could feel the salt spray. Fast forward to a packed movie theater today, where the lights dim and the same collective breath is held as John Wick reloads or Rey ignites her lightsaber. The technology's changed, but the magic hasn't. Homer's bards knew something modern filmmakers still rely on. Storytelling is a shared spell, and repetition is its incantation. Those ancient poets didn't just tell stories, they built rituals. Epithets like swift-footed Achilles or rosy-fingered Dawn weren't filler. They were anchors, helping listeners remember and feel the rhythm. Today's blockbusters do the same thing. Think of how "I Am Iron Man" echoes through the MCU, or how "Winter is Coming" becomes a chilling refrain in Game of Thrones. These aren't just lines, they're modern-day epithets designed to stick in our minds like Homer's phrases did around campfires. Even Star Wars, with its "I've got a bad feeling about this," recurring across generations, mirrors the oral tradition's love of familiar beats, proof that some storytelling tools are timeless. And let's talk about imagery. Homer's bards didn't have CGI, so they made every word count. The Cyclops cave wasn't just scary, it was a towering horror, gaping like a blacksmith's furnace. That kind of visceral detail lives on in cinema's most iconic moments. When the T-Rex first stomps onto the screen in Jurassic Park, or when the Dothraki horde charges in Game of Thrones, we're seeing Homer's legacy. Images so sharp they're etched into our brains. Directors like Spielberg and Jackson are the new bards, using visuals instead of verse to make us feel the story. But here's the real wonder: these stories leap borders. Homer's epics spread across the Mediterranean without a single written copy, just as Star Wars or Harry Potter now transcend language, dubbed and subtitled for every culture. Why? Because the best tales speak to something universal: the hero's struggle, the villain's fall, the hope that courage might just be enough. Whether it's a bard's lyre or a Dolby surround system, the goal's the same: to make strangers lean in together, hearts racing as one, reminded that even after 3,000 years, a great story still feels like coming home. Penelope at her loom, unraveling each night's work to stall her suitors, isn't just a plot device, she's the original blueprint for love as an act of quiet rebellion. While Odysseus battles monsters, she wages her own war with nothing but patience and a single thread, proving that loyalty can be as epic as any sword fight. Fast forward to modern romances like The Notebook, where Ali's choice to return to Noah mirrors Penelope's steadfastness, or Titanic's Rose clutching the heart of the ocean decades after Jack's sacrifice. These aren't just tearjerker moments, they're Homer's legacy whispering through time. Love isn't fireworks, it's the embers that outlast the blaze. What makes Penelope's devotion so riveting 3,000 years later? Psychologists point to the endurance paradox, the idea that love gains meaning through struggle, like a muscle strengthened by resistance. Relationship expert Esther Peril notes, the stories we crave most aren't about love found, but love tested. Think of Pride and Prejudice's Elizabeth and Darcy, circling each other through misunderstandings, or Outlander's Claire and Jamie, separated by centuries yet bound by vows. Even Up's montage of Carl and Ellie's life together, with its unspoken sacrifices, owes a debt to Homer's vision of love as a marathon, not a sprint. But here's the twist: modern audiences hunger for Penelope's grit and her agency. Where Homer's heroine waits, contemporary storytellers let their women fight. Gone Girl's Amy Dunn turns Penelope's patience into a weapon, while the Hunger Games Katniss guards Peter with the same ferocity Odysseus shows his crew. The question isn't just, would you wait 20 years, but what would you do while waiting? That shift reflects our evolving ideals, love as partnership, not just perseverance. Yet some threads remain unbroken. The Odyssey's most radical idea wasn't that Penelope waited, it's that Odysseus wanted to come home. In an era of swaggering heroes, Homer dared to say a warrior's greatest quest might be reuniting with the woman who held the fort. That's why Casablanca's Rick sacrificing his happiness for Ilsa still wrecks us, or Eternal Sunshine's Joel begging to relive even painful memories of Clementine. Love as a choice, not just fate, is Homer's quiet gift to storytelling, one that still tugs at hearts, whether the obstacle is a cyclops or a missed text message. So is true love about waiting like Penelope? Maybe the better question is, what's worth the wait? When Brooklyn's Eilis crosses oceans for Tony, or normal people's Connell and Marion circle back to each other through years of missteps, they're answering Homer in their own ways. Because the deepest romances, ancient or modern, understand that loyalty isn't passive, it's the daily decision to keep weaving, even when the loom feels empty. And that's a story no era outgrows. Agamemnon's blood stains the floor of his own palace, spilled by the wife he betrayed, a homecoming turned massacre that echoes through every revenge thriller you've ever gasped at. Homer didn't just write a murder, he etched the template for betrayal's bitter aftermath, a ripple still felt in Michael Corleone's whispered, "Settle all family business" in The Godfather, or John Wick's silent rage when his dog is killed. These aren't just callbacks, they're proof that the oldest wounds cut the deepest, because Agamemnon's story isn't about who swung the blade, it's about the cycles of violence that turn victims into executioners. A theme so potent it fuels everything from Kill Bill's Bride to Game of Thrones' Red Wedding. What makes Homer's take on vengeance so timeless? It's the moral quicksand. Clytemnestra doesn't murder Agamemnon in a vacuum. She's avenging their daughter Iphigenia, sacrificed for a war he chose. That gray area where justice and revenge blur pulses through Black Panther's Killmonger, whose rage at Wakanda's abandonment mirrors Clytemnestra's fury. Even the Dark Knight's Harvey Dent, muttering, "You either die a hero," as he flips his coin, channels that same Homeric truth. Betrayal twists even the noblest souls. Modern storytellers didn't invent anti-heroes, they inherited them from a poet who understood that every act of vengeance plants seeds for the next tragedy. But here's the twist Homer knew: revenge stories thrive on ritual. The Orsteia, the trilogy following Agamemnon's death, doesn't end with bloodshed. It ends with courts and laws suggesting society must break the cycle. Sound familiar? John Wick's high table rules or the Equalizer's McCall balancing scales outside the law grapple with the same dilemma. Is vengeance a personal right or a societal poison? Prisoners Keller Dover torturing a suspect in his basement, or Old Boy's Odysseus chewing through his own tongue, push that question to the brink. These characters aren't just violent, they're trapped in Homer's labyrinth, where every turn leads back to the same choice. When does payback become its own crime? So why do we still lean in when the betrayed strike back? Maybe because Agamemnon's shadow reminds us that vengeance isn't about winning, it's about what's left after the bodies fall. The next time you watch a character cock a gun or unsheath a sword, listen for the whisper of an ancient truth. Every act of violence is a thread in a tapestry woven long before Troy burned. And the real question isn't who pulls the trigger, it's whether anyone can cut the thread without unraveling themselves. Odysseus staring into the eye of a cyclops isn't just a life or death moment. It's the birth certificate of every smooth-talking, quick-thinking rogue you've ever rooted for. When he whispers "nobody" as his name, spinning a lie that saves his crew, he's not just surviving, he's inventing a character archetype that would evolve into Danny Ocean plotting casino robberies, Loki turning betrayal into an art form, or even Han Solo talking his way out of a Mos Eisley cantina. Homer's genius was realizing that brains could be as thrilling as brawn, that a hero who outthinks his enemies is just as compelling as one who outfights them. The appeal of the trickster isn't just about wit, it's about subverting expectations. Odysseus doesn't overpower Polyphemus. He gets him drunk, blinds him, and escapes disguised as a sheep. That same audacious energy fuels Ocean's 11's elaborate cons, where George Clooney's crew uses misdirection and charm instead of brute force. Or take Pirates of the Caribbean's Jack Sparrow, whose entire persona, swaying walks, slurred quips, and chaotic plans, is pure Odysseus by way of rum. Even leveraged team of grifters operates on Homer's oldest rule: the best weapon isn't a sword, it's the villain's own arrogance. As screenwriter John Rogers puts it, audiences adore a con because it lets them in on the joke. We're not just watching the trick, we're part of it. But here's the twist Homer understood. Tricksters walk a razor's edge between hero and menace. Odysseus' cleverness saves his men, but his hubris dooms them later, just as Breaking Bad's Walter White's genius spirals into cruelty, or Sherlock's brilliance shades into manipulation. The best modern rogues, from Loki's god of mischief to Deadpool's fourth wall-breaking chaos, inherit that duality. They're charming because they're dangerous, and dangerous because they're charming. Mythologist Joseph Campbell called tricksters the gods' mischief makers, but in today's stories, they're often the ones questioning who the real gods are. What keeps these characters fresh across millennia? It's the balance of laughter and peril, the gasp when a plan teeters on failure, the grin when it clicks. The Sting's card sharps, Guardians of the Galaxy's quip heavy heists, even Knives Out's Benoit Blanc peeling back lies layer by layer, they all dance to Homer's rhythm. Because the trickster's greatest magic isn't deception, it's making us complicit. When you cheer for Loki's latest scheme or Ocean's flawless execution, you're not just watching Odysseus' legacy, you're living it. Odysseus setting sail from Troy had no GPS, no map, just the fickle winds of the gods and a hunger for home. That same uncharted thrill pulses through Indiana Jones snatching his hat before the boulder crushes him, or Marlin dodging jellyfish in Finding Nemo. Homer didn't just write a journey, he crafted the ultimate road trip blueprint, where every detour, whether a Cyclops cave or the Temple of Doom, reveals something darker about the world and the hero themselves. Think about it, the Odyssey's episodic structure, with its island-hopping dangers and fleeting allies, isn't just ancient storytelling, it's the DNA of every binge-worthy TV season. From Lost Smoke monster mysteries to the Mandalorian's Planet of the Week adventures. What makes these quests timeless? It's the layered stakes. Odysseus isn't just fighting sirens, he's wrestling with his own pride, just as Indy's whip-cracking bravado masks his fear of commitment, or Marlin's overprotectiveness hides his grief. Modern writers didn't invent character arcs, they inherited them from Homer's knack for making physical journeys mirror emotional ones. Mona's ocean voyage isn't just about restoring a gem, it's about a girl proving her worth to herself and her ancestors. Even Zootopia's bunny cop cracking a case follows the Odyssey's rhythm, setbacks that aren't random but tests forcing the hero to adapt or break. And let's talk structure. Homer's episodic format, monster here, seduction there, a pit stop in the underworld, feels startlingly modern. Game of Thrones' scattered POVs, Star Trek's Alien of the Week diplomacy, even The Witcher's tangled timelines all owe a debt to the Odyssey's mosaic storytelling. But here's the twist, these aren't filler episodes. Like Homer's lotus eaters tempting the crew into complacency, every detour in Mad Max, Fury Road or Spirited Away strips the hero a little barer, preparing them for the final reckoning. So what's your epic journey? Maybe it's a cross-country move, a career leap, or just surviving Monday. Homer's real gift was showing us that quests aren't about the destination, they're about who you become shipwrecked along the way. And whether your Cyclops is a spreadsheet or a literal monster, the rules haven't changed. Keep your wits, trust your crew, and never forget why you set sail. Because the best adventures, ancient or modern, aren't measured in miles, they're measured in scars and stories. Homer's world wasn't just a backdrop, it was a living, breathing universe where gods meddled in mortal affairs, where every island held a new terror or temptation, and where the past clung to heroes like shadows. This wasn't just storytelling, it was the birth of world building, a tapestry so rich that 3,000 years later, creators of Marvel's New York or Star Wars' galaxy far, far away still weave threads from that same loom. Think about it, Mount Olympus isn't so different from Asgard, both realms where capricious deities watch over lesser beings. The winding path Odysseus sails mirrors the hyperspace lanes of Star Wars, each stop a chance to encounter bounty hunters like Boba Fett or sirens like Circe. Even the underworld, with its shades and rivers, finds echoes in God of War's Hades or Stranger Things' upside-down, proof that Homer's vision of a layered reality still haunts our imagination. What makes these mythic worlds endure? It's the interconnectedness. Homer didn't just drop monsters into random encounters, he anchored them in a larger cosmology. Scylla and Charybdis aren't just obstacles, they're manifestations of Poseidon's wrath, tied to Odysseus' earlier choices. That same cause and effect depth fuels Game of Thrones, where White Walkers aren't generic zombies but a consequence of ancient bargains broken. God of War's director Cory Barlog once admitted, Homer taught us that a great world isn't just about scale, it's about consequences. Kratos doesn't just fight gods, he unravels the threads of a tapestry they've woven for centuries. But here's where Homer's genius shines brightest. His world feels lived in. The Phaeacians' polished halls, the Cyclops' stinking cave, the eerie silence of the underworld. Each location pulses with sensory detail, a trick Lord of the Rings mastered with Hobbiton's pipe smoke and Minas Morgul's sickly glow. Modern RPGs like Assassin's Creed Odyssey literally reconstruct Homer's Greece, letting players sail past Ithaca's cliffs or spar with Athenian mercenaries, proving that a well-built world isn't just seen, it's felt. The real magic, though, lies in how these worlds hold up a mirror to humanity. The Olympians' petty squabbles reflect our own flaws, just as the boys' soups expose corporate greed masked as heroism. When Horizon Zero Dawn's tribal societies clash over ancient tech, or Dune's factions scheme for spice, they're replaying Homer's oldest lesson. World building isn't about escapism, it's about showing us ourselves through the veil of myth. So next time you lose yourself in a sprawling open-world game or a cinematic universe, remember, you're not just exploring a creation, you're walking paths first carved by a poet who knew that the truest worlds aren't made of pixels or paper, but of the timeless hungers and fears that bind us all. Achilles' rage, that searing, all-consuming fire, doesn't just cost him Patroclus, it consumes everything. One moment, he's the Greeks' unstoppable weapon. The next, he's dragging Hector's corpse through the dirt, blind to the consequences. That fatal pride, the kind that whispers you're untouchable, isn't locked in the past. It's the same flaw that turns Walter White from a desperate chemistry teacher into Heisenberg, a man so drunk on power he can't see the wreckage trailing behind him. Or Don Draper in Mad Men, whose genius for reinvention becomes a prison of his own lies. These modern tragedies aren't just borrowing from Homer, they're proving his oldest truth. A hero's greatest strength is often the crack that splits them open. Aristotle called it hamartia, a misstep, a miscalculation rooted in character. But Homer showed it's more than a mistake. It's the hero's shadow self, the part of them that refuses to bend. Achilles' heel isn't just a physical weak spot. It's the arrogance that makes him reject Agamemnon's peace offering, sparking a chain reaction of loss. Screenwriters today wield that same principle like a scalpel. Take Breaking Bad. Walter's brilliance isn't just his chemistry, it's his ability to outthink everyone. Yet that very skill becomes his poison as each triumph drags him deeper into darkness. Or Tony Soprano, whose loyalty to family justifies every brutality until the line between protector and predator vanishes. These characters don't fall because they're weak, they fall because they're too strong in all the wrong ways. What's chilling is how these flaws feel inevitable, like a prophecy fulfilling itself. Achilles knows his fate, glory, or an early grave, yet charges ahead anyway. That's the tragic dance modern storytellers love, the moment a character sees their flaw but can't stop it. Better Call Saul's Jimmy McGill, slipping into Saul Goodman's slick suits despite knowing where they'll lead, or Black Swan's Nina, pushing her body beyond limits to achieve perfection, only to fracture under it. These aren't just bad choices, they're collisions between will and destiny, the same forces Homer set in motion millennia ago. So can a strength become a weakness? The answer's etched in every hero who soars too close to the sun. Whether it's Achilles' pride, Walter's cunning, or Don Draper's charm, the pattern holds. We root for them not despite their flaws, but because of them. Because deep down, we recognize that same tension in ourselves. The fear that what makes us exceptional might also be what breaks us. And that's the hook no audience can resist. The terrible, beautiful question of whether redemption is possible once the fatal flaw takes hold. Odysseus washing up on Ithaca's shores, battered but alive, isn't just the end of a journey. It's the birth of redemption itself. Covered in grime and disguised as a beggar, he doesn't storm his palace like a conqueror. He waits, watches, and earns his way back into Penelope's trust. That slow, painful process of proving you've changed, Homer sketched it first, and Hollywood's been tracing those lines ever since. Think of Andy Dufresne crawling through sewage in The Shawshank Redemption, emerging into rain with arms raised not as a prisoner, but as a man reborn. Or Prince Zuko in Avatar, The Last Airbender, whose agonizing turn from villain to ally mirrors Odysseus' struggle to shed the scars of war. These stories don't just reward survival, they demand transformation, forcing heroes to confront who they were to become who they're meant to be. What makes redemption arcs so irresistible? Psychologists point to our hardwired hope for second chances. Dr. Daryl Van Tongeren, who studies meaning in narratives, notes, audiences don't just want justice, they want the possibility that pain can lead to growth. That's why Odysseus' reunion with Penelope isn't a tidy, happy ending. It's a tentative dance of tested loyalty, much like Les Miserables' Jean Valjean earning Bishop Myriel's mercy, or Logan's Wolverine protecting Laura despite his weariness. Homer knew redemption isn't about erasing the past, it's about carrying it differently. When Telemachus finally recognizes his father, it's not the armor that convinces him, it's the quiet authority of a man who's learned the cost of pride. But here's where modern tales twist the template, where Odysseus' redemption is deeply personal, restoring his home and name. Today's stories often tie it to societal healing. Black Panther's Killmonger dies without forgiveness, yet his legacy forces Wakanda to confront its isolation. BoJack Horseman's self-destructive star cycles through apologies without ever quite earning absolution. reflecting our era's skepticism of easy fixes. Even Better Call Saul's Jimmy McGill ends his journey in a prison cell, trading slick lies for the weight of truth, a far cry from Odysseus' throne. These shifts don't reject Homer's blueprint, they expand it, asking what redemption costs in a world less certain of right and wrong. So why do cultures across millennia keep retelling these stories? Because redemption arcs are mirrors. Odysseus' era valued homecoming as the ultimate penance, while the Shawshank Redemption's Andy prizes freedom, and Zuko's arc elevates spiritual balance. Each version reveals what its audience cherishes most: the chance to start over, to be seen anew, to prove that no one is just the worst thing they've ever done. And that's the thread connecting Ithaca's shores to today's screens, the unshakable belief that even the longest night might end in dawn. When Nestor speaks in the Iliad, princes lean in. His voice carries the weight of decades' battle scars, hard-won wisdom, and the kind of insight that turns brash warriors into leaders. He doesn't wield Achilles' strength or Odysseus' cunning. His power is patience, the ability to see farther because he's lived longer. Sound familiar? That's because Nestor's DNA runs through every great mentor who's ever guided a hero, from Star Wars' Yoda whispering, "Do or do not," to Harry Potter's Dumbledore offering lemon drops and life or death advice. These figures aren't just wise old souls, they're the bridge between potential and greatness, a trope Homer carved into stone long before Hollywood gave it a spotlight. What makes the mentor archetype so enduring? Story consultant Michael Hodge puts it bluntly. A mentor doesn't just teach skills, they reveal the hero to themselves. Nestor doesn't give Achilles new weapons, he reframes his rage as a choice. Similarly, Mr. Miyagi in The Karate Kid doesn't just teach Daniel karate, he shows him how to channel fear into focus. And Gandalf, he's Nestor with a staff, nudging Bilbo out his door because he knows comfort zones are where adventures go to die. These mentors share a sacred role. They're the first to see the hero's destiny, even when the hero can't. But here's the twist Homer understood. True mentors step back. Nestor fades into the background once Achilles finds his purpose, just as Obi-Wan vanishes to let Luke face Vader alone. Screenwriting guru Blake Snyder called this the mentor's sacrifice, the moment they withdraw, forcing the hero to stand on their own. Think of Haymitch in The Hunger Games, who trains Katniss but can't enter the arena with her. Or Mona's grandma Tolla, whose death sends her granddaughter sailing beyond the reef. Their absence isn't abandonment, it's the final lesson. So who's your favorite fictional mentor? Maybe it's the Matrix's Morpheus offering red pills and reality checks, or Black Panther's Zuri whose secrets shape a king. Whoever it is, they're playing a role as old as storytelling itself, the voice that whispers, "You're ready," even when the hero's knees are shaking. Because Nestor's legacy isn't about having all the answers. It's about knowing when to hand the sword to someone else and trust they'll swing it true. Eumaeus the swineherd might not wear a crown or swing a sword, but when Odysseus finally stumbles home in rags, it's this humble man who offers him shelter, no questions asked. That quiet loyalty, the kind that doesn't demand glory, is the heartbeat of every great sidekick, from Samwise Gamgee carrying Frodo up Mount Doom to Donkey chattering through Shrek's grumpiness. These characters aren't just comic relief or plot devices, they're the emotional anchors that keep heroes human. Think about it, would Odysseus' homecoming hit half as hard without Eumaeus' tearful recognition? Or Frodo's sacrifice mean as much without Sam's stubborn refusal to leave his side? Sidekicks embody the truth that no hero succeeds alone, a lesson as old as storytelling itself. Psychology backs this up. Studies on narrative engagement, like those from the University of Oklahoma, show audiences form deeper attachments to secondary characters when they exhibit unconditional support. It's why Sam's "I can't carry the ring, but I can carry you" moment lands like a gut punch, or Donkey's relentless optimism cracks through Shrek's isolation. These relationships tap into our primal craving for connection, the reassurance that even in darkness, someone's got your back. Homer knew this instinctively. Eumaeus isn't just loyal, he's Odysseus' tether to the man he was before war stripped him raw. Similarly, Hermione's brilliance and Ron's humor don't just assist Harry, they remind him he's more than the boy who lived. But sidekicks aren't just emotional ballast, they're narrative catalysts. Would Odysseus ever reclaim his throne without Eumaeus smuggling weapons into the palace? Would Frodo destroy the ring without Sam battling Shelob? Even Donkey's antics force Shrek to confront his fear of rejection. Modern storytelling doubles down on this dynamic. Guardians of the Galaxy's Rocket and Groot balance bravado with vulnerability, while Toy Story's Buzz and Woody push each other to grow. The magic lies in reciprocity. The sidekick isn't just a cheerleader, they're the hero's mirror reflecting blind spots and hidden strengths. And let's not forget the humor. Eumaeus' earthy wisdom lightens the Odyssey's tension, just as Sam's potato poetry cuts through Mordor's gloom. Donkey's one-liners and Star Wars droid banter aren't just jokes, they're pressure valves, letting audiences breathe before the next crisis. Yet beneath the laughs lies something profound. These characters keep heroes grounded. When Odysseus plots vengeance, Eumaeus speaks of peace. When Frodo falters, Sam quotes his gardener dad's simple truths. The best sidekicks don't just share the journey, they remind the hero and us what the journey's for. So next time you watch a lone hero stride into battle, look closer. The real stories, often in the footsteps beside them, the ones who stay when the world walks away, who carry the light when the hero's flame flickers. Because from Ithaca's olive groves to Middle-earth's ashes, the greatest adventures are never solo acts. They're duets written in the quiet language of loyalty and sung across 3,000 years of campfires, books, and screens. Helen of Troy's face may have launched 1,000 ships, but for centuries her voice was drowned out by the roar of war. Was she a pawn, a seductress, or a woman clawing for control in a world that gave her none? Homer leaves it hauntingly ambiguous, and that very ambiguity makes her the godmother of every complex female character who's ever grappled with power and perception. Think of Daenerys Targaryen in Game of Thrones, whose liberation of slaves spirals into fiery destruction, or Wonder Woman's struggle to reconcile justice with humanity's darkness. These modern heroines don't just kick down doors, they live in the gray areas Homer first sketched for Helen, where choice and coercion blur like smoke over burning Troy. Feminist scholar Mary Beard notes, the ancient world's most infamous woman wasn't given a story, she was made into one. Helen's agency flickers like a candle in the Iliad. Did she elope with Paris or was she stolen? Did she weave scenes of the war as tribute or protest? That tension between object and actor fuels today's most compelling female leads. Mad Max, Fury Road's Furiosa doesn't just escape Immortan Joe. She rewrites her own myth mid-desert, much like Circe in the Odyssey, who turns men to pigs not out of spite but survival. Margaret Atwood's Penelope reimagines Penelope's weaving as quiet rebellion, echoing contemporary retellings like Circe's, which reclaiming her narrative from Odysseus' grand tale. The real shift, modern storytellers are asking questions Homer's audience might not have. When Wonder Woman 1984 Barbara Ann becomes Cheetah, her villainy stems from longing to be seen, a mirror to Helen's isolation in Troy. Daenerys' descent into madness isn't just about power, it's about the crushing weight of being both savior and scapegoat, a duality Helen knew too well. Even Bridgerton's Daphne, navigating the marriage market, channels that same pressure. How much choice does a prize truly have? So who's the Helen of your favorite story? Maybe it's Gone Girl's Amy Dunn weaponizing the cool girl trope, or Killing Eve's Villanelle, whose violence is as much performance as identity. Helen's legacy isn't just beauty or tragedy, it's the unresolved tension of a woman trying to steer her fate in a storm of men's making. And that's a story we're still rewriting, one fierce, flawed heroine at a time. Polyphemus the Cyclops isn't just a one-eyed brute. He's the original nightmare, a hulking silhouette that's stalked our stories ever since. When Odysseus and his men stumble into his cave, they're not just facing a monster, they're confronting primal terror itself, the fear of being trapped, consumed, utterly powerless. That same chill runs down your spine when Darth Vader's respirator echoes in a darkened hallway, or when Sauron's eye pierces the skies of Mordor. These villains share more than just intimidation. They're spiritual descendants of Homer's vision, where true horror isn't in the fangs or the force lightning, but in the uncanny mirror these figures hold up to our darkest selves. What makes the Cyclops so enduring? It's the grotesque distortion of humanity. Polyphemus isn't some mindless beast. He tends sheep, he speaks, he even prays to his father Poseidon. That flicker of familiarity makes his brutality all the more unsettling, a blueprint for villains like Hannibal Lecter, whose charm masks a predator's soul. Modern horror understands this instinctively. Pennywise the clown lures children with laughter before revealing the void beneath. The xenomorph in Alien isn't just a killer, it's our own evolutionary terror given form. Even Thanos, wiping out half the universe with a snap, channels that cyclopean scale. A villain so vast his cruelty feels like natural law. But Homer's real innovation was giving monsters emotional stakes. Polyphemus isn't just scary because he eats men. It's his wounded howl when Odysseus blinds him, the pathetic way he calls out to his fellow Cyclopes, only to be mocked. That complexity fuels today's most compelling villains. Magneto's genocide stems from Holocaust trauma. Killmonger's rage in Black Panther burns with the fire of stolen heritage. Like Achilles' wrath turned inward, these antagonists force us to ask, are they so different from the heroes? Yet the greatest monsters aren't the ones who roar, they're the ones who whisper. Circe turning men to swine with a smile, the Lotus Eaters erasing memory through pleasure. These aren't threats you can outfight, only outwit. The Matrix's Agent Smith embodies this perfectly, his sterile bureaucracy deadlier than any dragon. And what's Get Out's sunken place if not a modern Lotus Eater's trap, where the horror isn't chains but complacency? So next time you see a villain's shadow stretch across the screen, look closer. That's not just CGI, it's 3,000 years of fear refined. From Cyclops to cybernetic overlords, the best monsters don't just threaten the hero. They show us the abyss we're all one misstep from tumbling into. And that's a terror no special effect could ever outdo. Odysseus stringing his bow isn't just a feat of strength, it's a loaded symbol, vibrating with themes of identity, kingship, and the tension between civilization and raw power. That moment when his fingers tighten around the weapon only he can wield isn't just about reclaiming a throne, it's about reclaiming the self. Fast forward to The Lord of the Rings, where the One Ring isn't merely a plot device, it's a corrosive whisper of ambition, a mirror reflecting each character's deepest fears. Or take the Hunger Games Mockingjay pin, transforming from a token of home into a rallying cry for revolution. These objects aren't props, they're storytelling grenades, and Homer pulled the first pin. What makes these symbols so potent? It's their elasticity, their ability to mean different things at different turns. The Trojan horse, that sleek deception hiding slaughter inside, morphs into Star Wars' Death Star, a technological terror masking fatal flaws. Directors like Guillermo del Toro openly credit Homer's influence, noting how objects in Pan's labyrinth, the faun's key, Ophelia's chalk, carry layered meanings. Every great film weapon or talisman owes a debt to Odysseus' bow. Del Toro once said, "It's not what the object does, it's what it unlocks in the characters and the audience." Modern cinema takes Homer's blueprint further by weaponizing visual shorthand. The spinning top in Inception isn't just a plot device, it's the embodiment of Cobb's grip on reality, spinning endlessly like his guilt. The green light in The Great Gatsby isn't just a beacon, it's the unreachable American dream distilled into a single glow. These symbols work because, like Homer's, they're active. The bow doesn't just represent Odysseus' kingship, it tests it, demanding he prove his worth. Similarly, Katniss Mockingjay isn't just a badge, it's a responsibility she can't shake, just as Frodo's ring becomes a weight he can't unshoulder. But here's where Homer's genius shines. His symbols are never one note. The Trojan horse is both Greek cunning and Trojan hubris. Odysseus' bow is liberation for him but doom for the suitors. That duality inspires modern twists like Black Panther's vibranium, a source of Wakanda's strength and its isolation, or Breaking Bad's pink teddy bear floating in Walt's pool, a child's toy stained with blood, embodying innocence shattered by pride. So next time you watch a film, play Spot the Symbol. Is it the briefcase in Pulp Fiction glowing with mystery, the origami unicorn in Blade Runner questioning what's real? These aren't Easter eggs, they're Homer's legacy, proving that the simplest object can carry the weight of the world if you know how to look. And that's the real magic. A well-placed symbol doesn't just tell a story, it lets the audience feel it, like Odysseus' bowstring humming with the promise of home. Odysseus staring at the horizon, aching for Ithaca's rocky shores, isn't just a plot point, it's the first recorded case of homesickness in literature, a feeling so primal it still tugs at audiences 3,000 years later. That longing for home, for the familiar scent of olive trees or the sound of a loved one's voice, transcends time and culture. It's why Dorothy's whispered, "There's no place like home," in The Wizard of Oz hits with such raw emotion, or Y.E. T.'s glowing finger reaching for the stars makes us tear up even now. These stories aren't just about geography, they're about identity. Homer understood that home isn't just where you live, it's who you are when you're there, a truth that echoes from ancient epics to Spielberg's suburban skies. Psychologists call this the nostalgia loop, a hardwired human impulse to seek safety in the familiar. Studies from the University of Southampton show that stories about homecomings trigger dopamine releases in the brain, the same chemical reward we get from reuniting with loved ones. It's why the Odyssey's climax isn't the monster battles or shipwrecks. It's the quiet moment Odysseus finally collapses into his own bed, recognized by his old dog and the creak of the olive wood frame. That specificity, the way Homer paints Ithaca's gritty details, makes the universal ache tangible. Modern filmmakers borrow this trick relentlessly. Lion Saru navigating Google Earth to find his childhood village, or Coco's Miguel strumming "Remember Me" to his abuela. These moments work because they're not about grand destinations, but the intimate textures of home, a lullaby, a street corner, the way light falls through a particular window. But here's where Homer's theme gets even richer. Home isn't static. Odysseus doesn't return to the Ithaca he left. War has changed him, and his kingdom has festered in his absence. That bittersweet tension, the impossibility of truly going back, fuels classics like The Godfather's Michael Corleone, who loses his soul trying to reclaim his family's honor, or Brokeback Mountain's Anis, forever haunted by the ranch he and Jack could never share. Even Toy Story 4 wrestles with this, as Woody realizes home isn't a child's bedroom, but wherever you choose to stand your ground. across cultures, the homecoming story adapts but never fades. Japan's Spirited Away turns Odysseus' journey into a bathhouse labyrinth, where Chihiro's quest to free her parents mirrors the struggle to preserve childhood innocence. In The Kite Runner, Amir's return to Kabul isn't just geographic, it's a reckoning with guilt and heritage. These narratives prove that while the definition of home shifts from Nigerian villages in Half of a Yellow Sun to the interstellar arc in Wall-E, the core hunger remains: to be known, to belong, to find a place where your story makes sense. So why does this theme endure? Maybe because homecomings aren't really about places. They're about reconciliation with the past, with ourselves, with the unbridgeable gap between who we were and who we've become. Homer knew that better than anyone. When Penelope finally embraces Odysseus, it's not just a reunion, it's a resurrection of the people they might have been, had war not carved its scars into them. And that's the thread connecting Ithaca to ours, to Elliot's suburban bedroom, to your own front porch light left on after a long trip. The journey might change us, but the dream of home, that never does. Hayao Miyazaki didn't just watch the Odyssey. He let it breathe through the rustling forests of Nausicaa, of the Valley of the Wind, where his eco-warrior princess mirrors Odysseus' resilience in a world poisoned by human folly. Half a globe away, India's Magadhira catapults Homer's themes into a whirlwind of reincarnation and swordplay, proving that a 3,000-year-old epic can pulse with new life when draped in saris and set to Bollywood beats. These adaptations aren't mere translations, they're alchemy, transforming the bones of Homer's tales into something fiercely local yet universally human. When Miyazaki was asked why Nausicaa shares Odysseus' tenacity, he simply said, "Great stories are like rivers, they carve their own paths through every landscape they touch." What makes the Odyssey so endlessly adaptable? It's the raw, elemental themes: homecoming, survival, the cost of pride, that resonate from Tokyo to Mumbai. In Nausicaa, the toxic jungle replaces Homer's wine-dark sea, and the beasts stand in for Poseidon's wrath, yet the core remains, a hero navigating a broken world. Magadhira swaps Ithaca for royal intrigue and ancient curses, but its heart beats with the same question: what would you sacrifice for love and honor? Filmmaker S.S. Rajamouli, who'd later create Bahubali, described Magadhira as Homer in a dhoti, blending chariot battles with soul bonds that defied death. The details change: sandal, wood paste instead of olive oil, katanas instead of bronze spears, but the soul, that's pure Odyssey. Even the structure transcends borders. Homer's episodic voyage finds echoes in Journey to the West, China's legendary pilgrimage tale, where Monkey King's trickery rivals Odysseus' cunning. Brazil's City of God reframes the hero's journey through favela alleyways, where Rocket's camera becomes his raft home. French director Claire Denis once mused, Homer's genius was leaving room, his silences are invitations for others to fill. That's why African griots weave Odysseus' wit into Anansi the spider's tales, and why The Road, a dystopian novel stripped to bare survival, feels like the Odyssey stripped of gods and glory. So how would you retell Homer today? Maybe set it in a cyberpunk sprawl where a rogue AI plays Circe, bending minds with algorithms instead of spells. Or as a migrant's odyssey across borders, where home isn't a place on a map but a memory carried in a single photograph. The magic isn't in the togas or the lotus flowers, it's in the choices that define us when the world has stripped everything else away. Because whether you're Miyazaki painting airships or a Bollywood choreographer turning battle scenes into dance, the question remains: what does it mean to be human in a world that keeps testing your will to return? The Coen brothers' O Brother, Where Art Thou? Doesn't just borrow from the Odyssey, it baptizes Homer's epic in the muddy waters of the Mississippi, swapping Cyclops for a one-eyed Bible salesman and sirens for bewitching laundresses singing by the river. Yet for all its banjos and chain gangs, the film nails the soul of Odysseus' journey. Three men chasing freedom while the universe seems hell-bent on tripping them up. George Clooney's Ulysses Everett McGill isn't a king, but a slick-talking convict with pomade in his pocket and a lie always ready, proving you don't need bronze armor to carry the spirit of Homer's hero. The genius lies in how the Coens translate ancient themes into Depression-era grit. The Lotus Eaters become a backwater baptismal cult, lulling travelers into complacency. The underworld, a Ku Klux Klan rally lit like a hellish opera. Every frame whispers the stakes might look different, but the human struggle hasn't changed. Wolfgang Petersen's Troy, on the other hand, strips away Homer's gods to focus on the raw, blood-soaked humanity of war. Brad Pitt's Achilles isn't just a demigod, he's a rock-star warrior wrestling with his own myth, a man who knows he'll die young but can't resist the siren song of glory. Where O Brother plays loose and whimsical, Troy leans into the Iliad's tragic weight, turning Hector's farewell to Andromache into a heart-wrenching scene that could have been ripped from a modern war film. The absence of divine intervention sharpens the focus on choices: Agamemnon's greed, Paris' cowardice, Achilles' rage. Petersen's take proves that even without Olympus' thunderbolts, these characters feel electric because their flaws are ours, just magnified on a battlefield. Now imagine Netflix's upcoming Odyssey remake, rumored to blend Homer's text with cutting-edge CGI. Will it give us a Cyclops rendered in terrifying 4K detail, or a Circe whose island pulses with surreal, algorithm-driven visuals? Technology lets us walk Ithaca's shores without leaving our couches, but the challenge remains the same as the Coens and Petersen faced: how to make a 3,000-year-old story feel urgent. Game of Thrones already proved audiences will devour Homeric scale drama betrayals, sieges, flawed heroes, if the execution thrums with emotional truth. What's fascinating is how each adaptation reflects its era. O Brother's folksy charm mirrored early 2000s nostalgia for Americana, while Troy's gritty realism resonated with post-9/11 war fatigue. Today's remakes, armed with AI and VR, might ask new questions. Can algorithms capture Penelope's loneliness? Can motion capture convey Hector's trembling courage? Homer's epics survive because they're not relics, they're mirrors, reshaped by every generation that holds them up. And as long as we keep asking what it means to fight, to wander, to yearn for home, those ancient verses will keep finding fresh voices, whether sung by a chain gang, shouted on a Trojan rampart, or whispered through your earbuds on a subway ride. Imagine strapping on a VR headset and suddenly standing on the deck of Odysseus' ship as waves crash against the hull, the screams of the Cyclops echoing behind you. This isn't the future, it's already happening. Studios like Meta are partnering with classicists to build immersive Homeric experiences, where you don't just hear about Scylla's six-headed horror, you feel her breath down your neck. But here's the twist. This tech isn't just dazzling, it's revealing something profound about how we've always consumed epics. Homer's original audience didn't sit passively. They leaned in around fires, the bard's voice painting pictures in their mind. VR and CGI, they're the modern campfire, reigniting that primal, participatory magic. Take Assassin's Creed Odyssey, where Ubisoft rebuilt all of ancient Greece with obsessive detail, every temple column aligned to archaeological records, every shoreline matching Homer's descriptions. Players don't just watch Odysseus' journey, they live their own, sailing the Aegean, debating philosophy with Socrates, or sneaking into Minotaur-filled labyrinths. Creative director Jonathan Dumont calls it interactive archaeology, where gameplay uncovers layers of myth and history. The game's Discovery Tour mode even strips out combat, letting you wander as a student would, proving that tech can be both spectacle and scholarship. Then there's AI quietly composing its own epics. Tools like OpenAI's GPT have already generated Homer-style verses when fed prompts about a hero's return. But here's the catch. While AI can mimic meter and metaphor, it lacks the lived grit the salt spray Odysseus tasted, the ache in Hector's limbs as he faced Achilles. As Black Mirror creator Charlie Brooker warns, algorithms excel at recycling, not feeling. The best CGI and VR don't just dazzle, they humanize. When Troy, Fall of a City, used motion capture to make Achilles' duel with Hector feel viscerally personal, or when the Odyssey VR experience lets you hold Penelope's loom threads, the tech disappears. What's left? The same shiver Homer's listeners felt millennia ago. So will AI write the next Odyssey? Maybe. But the epics that endure won't come from code alone. They'll bloom where silicon meets soul. Like a bard's lyre or a VR headset, the tool matters less than the tremor it sends through the human heart. And that's a story no algorithm can predict. 3,000 years haven't dulled the blade of Homer's stories because they weren't just about gods and monsters. They were about us. Every time Tony Stark cracks a joke to hide his fear, or Mona sails beyond the reef despite her doubt, they're channeling the same raw humanity that made Achilles weep over Patroclus or Odysseus tremble at the sound of the sea. These epics endure not because of their age, but because they mapped the uncharted territory of the human heart long before psychology had a name for it. The jealousy of gods, the weight of grief, the cost of pride, these aren't ancient relics. They're the currency of every great story we tell today, from indie films to billion-dollar franchises. What's astonishing isn't just how Homer's structures persist, the hero's journey, the tragic flaw, but how his questions still haunt us. When Breaking Bad's Walter White spirals into darkness, we're watching Achilles' rage reframed through a meth lab. When The Last of Us forces Joel to choose between love and survival, it's Odysseus' dilemma on the shores of Circe's island, stripped of myth but not meaning. Even our anti-heroes, from Mad Men's Don Draper to Succession's Logan Roy, are descendants of Homer's flawed kings, proving that heroism was always more complicated than a happy ending. And let's talk craft. Those sweeping aerial shots in Lord of the Rings, they're Homer's rosy-fingered dawn made visual, the non-linear storytelling of Pulp Fiction or Westworld. That's the Odyssey's time-jumping narrative in a leather jacket. Screenwriters like Aaron Sorkin borrow Homer's rhythmic dialogue staccato, exchanges that feel like spear thrusts, while directors like Denis Villeneuve use silence as weaponized as any Homeric epithet. The tools have evolved, but the blueprint, that's been set in stone since the first bard strummed a lyre. So why do these dusty scrolls still grip us? Because Homer didn't write about perfect warriors or tidy morals. He wrote about people, glorious, broken, stubborn people, who dared to hope, to fight, to fail. That's the real magic trick, making 3 millennia feel like yesterday. Next time you lose yourself in a hero's journey, whether it's Star Wars or Spider-Verse, pause for a second. Listen close. Beneath the explosions and the synth score, you'll hear it, the whisper of an old poet, still teaching us what it means to be human. Now it's your turn. What's your favorite modern echo of Homer? A Game of Thrones betrayal that felt ripped from the Iliad, a sci-fi odyssey that made you ache for home. Drop it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. Because the best stories aren't just told, they're passed down, remixed and reborn. And this conversation, it's been going on for 3,000 years. Let's keep it